Welcome to the first public hearing on the proposed fiscal year 2026 operating and capital improvement budgets. The first item is the purpose of the first public hearing on the proposed 2026 operating budget. Article 6 in the Temple City Charter is titled Finance. Section 6-16 sets forth the submission of operating budget to City Council. Not later than 45 days prior to the start of the new fiscal year, the City Administrator shall submit to the City Council a proposed operating budget. Essentially, a proposed new operating budget is almost always a continuation of the current operating budget, typically with a limited number of new or expanded programs and activities, and occasionally with a few reduced or altered programs and activities. For the City of Temple, a significant part of its budget development process consists of reviews and discussions involving the local government's elected officials, the appropriate department director or directors, the City Administrator's office, and the city's finance accountant and financial consultant. The outcome of this process is the draft operating budget for the general and water funds being presented at this November 17th public hearing. Then, based on the public hearing and any subsequent discussions by the Mayor and City Council, a final proposed fiscal year 2026 operating budget will be the subject of a second public hearing on Monday, December 1st at 6:30 p.m. That public hearing, with whatever comments presented, will be reviewed prior to a final recommendation and action by the City Council. Section 6-17 of the Charter sets forth the action by City Council on budget. As part of its deliberative process, the City Council can amend the operating budget proposed by the City Administrator. The budget that is adopted by the City Council must include those expenditures. Additionally, the City Council's action, it is expected, though there is provided the means for a maximum of 6 months. However, this is for extenuating circumstances only, as it is not a best method of practice. At this time, I will report on the proposed fiscal year 26 operating budget. Then, following this report, the presentation of the proposed 2026 fiscal year operating fund budget. Identification of revenues, sources, and the anticipated dollar amounts. The expected anticipated revenues for the 2026 general $524. In addition, the enterprise fund revenues is anticipated at $5,491,450. The expenditures, looking at the general fund, which I mentioned is a balanced budget, is also $6,524. And of those, for the departments, the debt service is $226,000 of that, governing body $192,556, administration $1,141,724, blue line $10,000, code enforcement $87,299, community development $379,300, library $182, museum $69,485, public work $1,024,191. That is the general fund. The operating budget for the water sewer fund expenditures, the debt $765,000, $60,700. Any public comments on the operating fund budget? Either for general, we'll start with general fund. I see none. How about water, the enterprise fund operating? I see none. Okay. Moving on to the purpose of the first public hearing on the proposed 2026 capital budget. 6-20 is identified with the heading of capital budget and states that on an annual basis, at least 60 calendar days before the start of the City of Temple's new fiscal year, which is the calendar year, the city administrator is required to submit to the mayor and city council a proposed capital improvements plan. This plan is to include a recommended capital budget which identifies the means of financing the capital improvements being proposed for implementation in the ensuing fiscal year. During the regular monthly series of city council meetings on October 27th, the regular monthly series of committee meetings, the proposed 2026 capital budget was presented to the mayor and city council during the Finance and Administration Committee segment. Since this initial presentation of the proposed 2026 capital budget, Temple's elected officials have reviewed and discussed the proposed capital projects. The fiscal year 2026 proposed capital projects, as presented in this public hearing, are the projects being considered for implementation during fiscal year 2026. While staff members have the responsibility of proposing various capital projects and the overall capital budget, the City Council is the body which decides which projects are included in the adopted annual capital fund budget. Section 6-20 of Article 6 in the Temple Charter calls for the City Council in December to adopt by ordinance the new annual capital budget. Therefore, following the second public hearing on December 1st at 6:30 p.m., it is expected that the fiscal year 2026 capital fund budget will be adopted during the City Council's regular monthly meeting. In conclusion, it should be noted that the adoption of the new fiscal year 2026 capital fund budget does not affect the previous fiscal year's budgeted capital projects which have not been completed. Those projects continue until they are completed or discontinued. At this time, I'll report on the proposed 2026 capital fund budget. Then there will be an opportunity for comments. The proposed 2026 fiscal year capital improvements budget is a proposed total of $2,479,500 with revenue funding sources from SPLOST 21, General Fund and Water Fund, and Blue Line. Proposed expenditures by departments. Administration. For this year, there is a City Hall server in the amount of $35,000 that is projected, and continuing with the software transition for $79,000, finishing up that project that was from this year. The total administration is $114,000. Senior Center, a total of $70,000 with $35,000 approximately for replacement and new kitchen appliances, including a rash. Expenditures, continuing with this year's project of parking lot improvements as the RFP has gone out. Public Works / water engineering process from the last 3 years. The tractor with batwing attachment, water infrastructure projects, and road repairs for a total of $1,001,000. Public safety, utility car, metal detector, and replacement of outdated equipment for a total of $234,500. Sewer, continuation of the aquafilter disc cloth change and Billings sewer force main upgrade and office remodel, with additions of pump stations upgrades, SBR diffuser replacement, and bar screen installation for a total of $540,000. Economic development. Most are continuation of projects, trackless train, beautification, community development office space for a total of $320,000. These departments total to a total of $2,479,500. Are there any public comments? I see none. I would like to announce that the second public hearings on the fiscal year 2026 proposed